All In Sports Network. We love sports.
Well, we are quickly approaching the 24-hour mark. In fact, we're probably already there by the time you're watching this for Texas A&M and Texas at Kyle Field Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Central, and it's going to be rocking. We're going to have so much for you, and we're really excited to get to it. Ben Peck here on the All In Aggies YouTube channel. If you would be so kind, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this video. We've been stalling out a little bit lately, but we really enjoy what we've been able to put together for this show. Go check out some of our old videos. We've got a feature story we did on Torian York and his family in Temple. We caught up with people from Austin about the Longhorns. Just a lot of stuff going on. We've got this video as well. And then you can also subscribe to this in podcast form. It's been a little bit delayed on some of those episodes because of some technical difficulties, but we're working on that as well. Anyways, getting into this game and this clip, want to talk about the key to the game for me. We're not going to do a pecking order of the top 5 things I'm going to be looking for. We're just going to be kind of focusing on 2 brief things that we're looking at. Number 1 being the sacks and the pressure for Texas A&M. No secret that is going to be a key to success for the Aggies and a recipe for Texas A&M to be able to pull off this upset over the Longhorns and make it to Atlanta in the SEC championship game. Before I get going much further, I want to hear what Mike Elko had to say about his thoughts about what his pass rush unit has been able to generate in terms of pressure lately and maybe where they've been leaving some extras on the field.
When you look at the overall sack number, probably the most disappointing thing is the amount that we've missed. I think if you add up the amount of times we've had somebody wrapped on the quarterback and couldn't get him on the ground, that has to be somewhere up around 15 on the course of the season, right? And so if you just say you got half of those, what does that do to your sack total? It probably puts it where you want it to go. And so that's probably more than anything, the most disappointing part of the season has been our inability to finish on the quarterback and get him on the ground.
Yeah, so that is obviously, as he alluded to, we talked about it early in the year. They were getting a lot of pressure, not a lot of sacks. And this is something where I think you're going to have to see a Mizzou-like, an LSU-like performance from this unit in order to really take control of the game. They can win if they don't get a lot of sacks. I think there's a way, but that's one way where they can just dominate, take over, and you're playing at their mercy. And I think that would put you in a good spot. Why don't just look at Texas real quick and their situation, because I think this has been something that's been hard for me to figure out. Again, so much has been made, I think understandably so, about the non-Georgia opponents for Texas. It's not necessarily their fault that some of them, Michigan, haven't lived up to the billing they usually would. But, how do we evaluate the play of the offensive line? We know they're capable, especially Kelvin Banks. They've got some guys on that unit, but against a unit like Texas A&M that has a lot of talent, granted, which is maybe not completely lived up to the capability that it's capable of, the potential that's capable of, I should say, at times. But they high-end level talent, their best performance, I think, mirrors or should be able to mirror just about anybody. Last several games and just games of note for Texas in terms of the offensive line and really specifically negative play. So this is, could be pass rush, could be run stopping, what have you. Obviously, the game that stands out is Georgia. 7 sacks, 10 tackles for loss. Other ones, though, that stand out to me, Vanderbilt, I had forgotten about this. Vanderbilt had 4 sacks and 9 tackles for loss. And that is probably, as crazy as it sounds, maybe Arkansas, but maybe as hostile an environment as the Longhorns have faced, just in terms of where the team was at the time. I guess Arkansas just in terms of sheer numbers, but really you go down the list. I mean, Michigan should have been, but because of the team, wasn't there necessarily a hostile environment. Maybe I should qualify it that way. Hostile environment if you factor in the quality of the team that they're playing against and the atmosphere. I understand Vanderbilt, it is what it is, but coming off the Georgia loss, to give up 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, that was peak Vandy in terms of the fans believing in everything. That's maybe a little alarming for me if I'm a Texas person. 2 sacks, 9 tackles for loss in the Arkansas game. Again, that kind of speaks to they were getting pressure at times. Maybe didn't always translate to actual raw sack numbers, but they were able to get back there. Much better at home the last few weeks. 1 sack allowed to each against Florida and Kentucky. 3 tackles for loss for Florida, 4 for Kentucky. But Oklahoma, 6 tackles for loss in the Red River rivalry game. 7 tackles for loss from Mississippi. So teams have been able to get into the backfield a decent amount. And again, the sacks have been no more than 2 in a single game, with the exception of Georgia and Vanderbilt. So that is something that I think for A&M is going to have to be the area where, that would be the area if you told me, you can get one thing to look at to figure out how this game is going to go, or if the Aggies have a chance, barring something like obvious, like turnovers, a massive turnover gap, that would probably be the one. If they're going to have an actual 7, 5, 6, 7, 8 sack performance, that could be something. And I think it's possible, with the sense that, a lot of the teams A&M has struggled with in terms of actually finishing, as Coach Elko alluded to, and getting to the quarterback is these mobile quarterbacks. The Notre Dame game, Riley Leonard gave them fits at times. You think about the ones that they had a lot of success with. I'm bringing up their stats to make sure I'm not talking out of pocket here. All right, team sacks for Texas A&M. 1 against Notre Dame, Riley Leonard. None against McNeese. 2 against Florida with Graham Mertz / DJ Lagway. 2 against Bowling Green. 3 against Arkansas with Taylor Green. Now, that's a fairly mobile guy who can move around a little bit. 6 against Missouri. Definitely the top of the list. 2 against LSU. But again, remember, LSU, they were able to pressure Nussmeier into some brutal turnovers. So some of that didn't show up in the sack number, but it did show up in other ways. 3 against Mississippi State on the road. None against South Carolina with Lenore Sellers, a guy who can move his legs a little bit. And then, 2 last week against Auburn with Peyton Thorne. So they've actually – those numbers were better than I remembered them in terms of some of the baseline, with the exception of South Carolina. They have gotten at least 2 sacks every game since Florida. That's better than I remembered it being. But bottom line, you see where the mobile quarterbacks have been able to not even hurt A&M at times. At times, yes, I'm not doubting it, but really like limiting that portion of it. I think if Lagway hadn't gone back into the game, I think that Florida number could have been a lot higher. Notre Dame with Riley Leonard, that was tough. Arkansas, 3 against Taylor Green. If it wasn't Taylor Green, it could have been, I think, a lot more. Brady Cook was a little banged up in that game. Mississippi State. LSU, I was going to say, I'm not going to go down the whole list, but might as well. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier, we talked about that. Lenore Sellers, mobile, and you didn't get to him. And then Peyton Thorne, 2 sacks, but could have maybe had a few more there. And, I know also for A&M people, the holding conversation has to be had about the whole no accepted holding penalties against the Texas A&M opponent's offensive line since Bowling Green. So maybe that's skewing things a little bit. And if they got holds that were preventing sacks, or maybe holding calls that should have been made that would have set up longer passing downs that would have led to sack opportunities. So that's maybe a caveat there as well. But I do think this team is kind of just scratching at the surface of, or maybe not scratching at the surface, but they're just starting to dig in a little bit into what they could be against a quarterback with limited mobility. And, there's talk that Quinn Ewers, his ankle is maybe not as great a shape as they had hoped. I think there was an update on Horns. I don't want to get this outlet wrong, but there was a update going around out there earlier today that Quinn's recovery basically was not where they maybe would have hoped. Not that he's not going to play, but something to just be mindful of. So if A&M can wreak havoc, especially with that crowd, I think you could see. I think the biggest thing I would compare it to would be second half LSU defensive effort, what we saw in that time. I think that's probably the closest game you would see where that would replicate what might be possible. Because LSU, again, a team similar to Texas with pretty good talent on the outside with their wide receivers. I'd say Texas probably a little bit better there, but, good tight end, pretty good receivers that can make plays. They made plays in that game, but Garrett Nussmeier, mobile-ish, but got hurried into some silly mistakes. I think Quinn Ewers has shown that he can do that from time to time. So I think that's the opportunity you've got to seize on for Texas A&M. All right, we're going to move on here real quick and talk about the running back situation for Texas A&M. But again, if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the show, and be sure to hit the bell, subscribe so that you can get more of our content after the game. Post-game reaction, highlights, all sorts of stuff, not just me sitting up here talking about Texas A&M. All right, let's get to the kind of bubbling headline. Rueben Owens has been listed the past couple of days as questionable for Texas A&M. Now, he got hurt before the season. It was basically said he was going to be out for the year unless they made a super deep run, and maybe he could come back later on in the year. But Rueben Owens, now at this point, I think he was listed questionable for a moment going into Auburn. He eventually got downgraded to doubtful and then was out for the Auburn game. But now, as of when I'm taping this Friday afternoon before the Friday report comes out, he's been listed 2 days in a row as questionable. And remember, that's a position with not a lot of depth right now, with Owens having been out. Le'Veon Moss is out for the year. And then you've got Amari Daniels, E.J. Smith coming back, or they not coming back. They've been there, but they are the ones who've been carrying the load. And now Rueben Owens kind of floating out there. I'll say too, Terry Bussey has been kind of not really filling in at running back, but they've thrown him in the backfield for a few snaps here and there against Auburn. But this is really quick. This was Mike Elko talking about, what is the status of Rueben Owens on Saturday, and we'll come back and discuss.
Ruben's running, he's moving. We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
So, like I said, very quick, but kind of stood out to me how coy that was. I think Elko in the past, especially with these injury reports having to come out, has not been shy about saying whether a guy is reasonably trending to coming back or not. I know that there's still the gamesmanship thing floating out there, but he's been pretty, well, at least with season-ending injuries, and maybe that's a little different. But for example, Jaden Hill and I can't remember who else it was. There was some DBs that were in question, and Will Lee, and he had no problem saying we feel pretty good that they're going to be back. So I think if he was still doubtful, they would maybe put that out there, but or maybe have a little more tea leaves to indicate that. But it sounds like he legitimately is in question and could be on the field either Saturday, tomorrow, or potentially even next week, which would be huge, taking on Georgia. I mean, Rueben Owens is a guy who I think has flashed certain types of potential that I don't think you have anywhere else in that running back room. I think Le'Veon Moss is sort of the power workhorse running back who can wear teams down, and Rueben Owens is similar to Terry Bussey. That's actually probably a good comparison in my mind, like a Terry Bussey-like figure in terms of his how dynamic he is and how versatile he can be as a receiving running back, just shifty in the backfield. And now I think the big thing for me, what a Rueben Owens return would do is it puts you in a position where I'd feel a lot better A&M closing out a game if they needed to, because that's one thing that has been kind of a holdup for me to have too much optimism for Texas A&M is the idea that if A&M does build up a lead late, if they're up 4, 7, 10 points in the fourth quarter with, less than 10 minutes to go, are they going to be able to shorten the game, limit possessions, and really just rely on the defense to get one last stop? And with the running back situation, and how good the Texas defensive front has been at times, I don't know that I'd feel great about those prospects. At least, I mean, we saw it against Auburn, right? Like you had, now granted, I know Marcel Reed like dropped the snap, but they had a chance, I feel like maybe a couple times to close out the game, and they couldn't do it. 3-and-out. So this is a situation where, if you need to be able to get like that one big stop against Texas if you're leading and have that basically be the ball game, whether it like actually is the ball game or it feels like it should be. Like you're getting the ball back with 2:45 to go. They have all 3 timeouts, but you're up by 4-7 or 3-7. You need to be able to close that out. And I just don't know if it's predictable run and run, how convincing I feel like Texas A&M could step up in that challenge. And then would you get to a point where, let's say Texas drives the field, they stall out at your 40-yard line, they turn the ball over on downs because they're down by 4 and they want to kick the long field goal. They went for it. You take over. Like I said, 2:45, 3 timeouts. You need to get a stop. They're going to sell out for the run. They stop the run. Then they get the ball back, on the plus side of the 2-minute warning. No timeouts now, but they get another chance to go down the field and get that score that they need. That makes me nervous. But if you can get a guy like Rueben Owens back, and I think Amari Daniels is a pretty physical runner, you still got E.J. Smith there. Rueben Owens, I imagine he would be limited if he does come back. So I think Amari Daniels will still probably have to take the lead, but he gives me a lot more confidence that A&M would be able to close out a game with its offense rather than relying just strictly on defense. And of course, Rueben Owens dynamic anyway. He can make significant plays for you to help you out throughout the course of the game. But that's where I really think it factors in, is being able to, make that defense hurt a little bit as we wind down toward 000 on the clock. All right, that's all the time I have for you today. That's all I had on the agenda. Just real quick, wanted to hop on here and kind of touch on those 2 things. Let us know in the comment section how you feel about this game, any predictions you have. Do you think the pass rush is going to come through for the Aggies? Do you think Rueben Owens will be available? And if he does, what do you expect? Is that just a change of pace back? Is that a huge addition? How do you feel about the impact that he would be able to make if he's available? Be sure to let us know in the comment section. Again, this has been Peck on the All In Sports Network with All In Aggies. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoy the channel, and we'll be back Saturday. Plenty of content for you. Again, go back and check out our videos from throughout the week. We've got so much content up there looking ahead to this game. With conversations from Austin and other stuff as well. So be sure to check it out. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you back here next time.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.